They called the rejected Omega a curse, until the Alpha King rode in with his army to find her. The morning sun barely touched the edges of the dense forest that surrounded the village of Urindor, yet already, whispers were traveling like shadows among the villagers. They spoke of Lyra, the young Omega who had been rejected since birth. Some said she was cursed, others feared her presence, and a few, though quietly, wondered if she was simply different. But difference, in a land ruled by strength and tradition, was dangerous. Lyra walked carefully along the forest path, her bare feet barely making a sound on the moss-covered earth. Her cloak, a faded green, wrapped tightly around her small frame, and her eyes, the color of stormy skies, scanned every movement. She had learned long ago that trust could kill, and so she trusted no one. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, but also a strange, unplaceable feeling, a warning perhaps or something more. Ever since her parents had cast her out, calling her a curse, Lyra had survived by being careful, by staying hidden. She had scavenged, learned to read the forest for signs of danger, and even tamed a few wild creatures who had come to trust her presence. Her life was lonely, yes, but it was safe, or as safe as it could be for someone everyone believed to be a curse. Lyra paused beside a small stream to drink, cupping her hands to scoop the cool water. As she drank, she sensed a presence, a tension in the forest that was not natural. Her sharp eyes scanned the tree line, but she saw nothing. And yet the feeling persisted. Something powerful was approaching, something that did not belong in the quiet of her forest. She shook her head and tried to ignore it. She had learned that fear could become a trap, and that sometimes hiding was the only way to survive. Yet she could not shake the feeling that this presence, whatever it was, carried both danger and curiosity. Hours later, while gathering herbs near the ruins of an old stone tower, Lyra heard the distant sound of hooves. Her heart skipped a beat. Hooves were not unusual. Merchants and travelers passed nearby from time to time. But these hooves were different, strong, measured, and numerous. And there was a certain rhythm, a commanding presence, in the way the sound carried through the forest. Lyra crouched behind the broken stones, her body tense, her hands gripping the hilt of the small dagger she always carried. She peeked through the crumbling walls and her breath caught. There, riding at the front of a line of armored soldiers, was a man unlike any she had ever seen. King Arik, the Alpha King of Urindor, whose name alone inspired awe and fear in every corner of the kingdom, rode a magnificent black stallion. His armor gleamed in the dim sunlight, his cloak billowing like a shadow of night, and his eyes, sharp and commanding, seemed to look beyond the forest, as if searching for something, searching for her. Lyra's first instinct was to run. But something in the way he carried himself, his quiet authority, his unwavering focus made her pause. There was no cruelty in his eyes nor arrogance. Instead, there was recognition, a strange certainty that unsettled her. She had always believed herself alone in the world. To see someone of his power and presence acknowledging her existence, even unknowingly, was disorienting. She had spent her entire life hiding, avoiding notice, and now she felt as though the forest itself was shrinking around her, forcing her into a confrontation she was not ready for. The king dismounted gracefully, his soldiers forming a semicircle around him as he advanced through the trees. Lyra's heart raced as she retreated further into the shadows of the ruins. She remembered the lessons of her childhood: never be seen, never be caught, never trust. Yet a strange pull in her chest told her that running this time might not be enough. As if sensing her hesitation, the king paused and scanned the ruins carefully. "I know you are here," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that made even the birds stop their singing. "I have come for you, Lyra." Her heart leapt. No one had ever called her by her name with such certainty. Fear surged, but curiosity and something deeper stirred alongside it. She had to see him, had to know why the Alpha King of Urindor would seek her out. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped from her hiding place, her dagger held loosely at her side. The king's eyes met hers, and for a moment the forest fell silent. "Do not be afraid," he said. There was no command in his tone, no expectation of submission, only a quiet certainty. "I am not here to harm you, I am here to protect you." Lyra's mind raced. Protect her? From what? From whom? She had lived in fear of her own people, of her own family, and now a king feared by all claimed he would protect her. Something inside her, a spark she had almost forgotten, flared. Could it be true? Could she allow herself to hope, even for a moment? Before she could answer, a rustling came from the forest edge. Lyra tensed, ready to flee, but the king's hand lifted, and his soldiers moved with precision, forming a protective wall. From the shadows, a massive wolf emerged, its eyes glowing faintly in the dappled light. Lyra froze. She recognized it immediately, the guardian of the forest, a creature bound to the ancient magic that ran through her veins. The wolf approached slowly, sniffing the air around Lyra and then bowing its head in respect to the king. A shiver ran down her spine. This was no ordinary wolf. It was tied to her in ways she had never fully understood. And now, under the watchful gaze of the Alpha King, it acknowledged that the time had come. King Eric knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level. "Lyra," he said again, his voice calm but firm, "your life is in danger. There are those who would use your gift as a weapon, but I can help you. I can give you the strength to survive and the freedom to choose your path." Lyra shook her head, tears threatening to fall. She had lived too long in fear to believe that anyone, even a king, could offer such promises. "I am a curse," she whispered. "I have always been a curse. You cannot help me." Eric's gaze softened, but his voice carried an unwavering conviction. "Perhaps the world has called you a curse because it did not understand you. Perhaps it is not you who is cursed, but those who fear what they do not comprehend. I will not let them dictate your fate." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, not from hope nor from trust, but from recognition. Someone saw her, truly saw her. A sudden shout from the forest snapped her attention away. Figures cloaked in shadow emerged from the trees, their intent unmistakable. They had come for her, as the king had warned. Without hesitation, Eric drew his sword, the blade flashing like lightning as he called his soldiers into formation. Lyra's heart pounded, terror and awe mingling as she watched the man fight, not with cruelty, but with precision and control, every movement a declaration of power. The shadowy figures hesitated, then retreated under the force of his command. When the danger passed, Eric turned to Lyra, extending his hand. "Come with me," he said simply. "You are not safe here, not anymore." Lyra hesitated, glancing back at the forest she had called home, at the ruins that had been her only companions, and at the path she had walked alone for so many years. And yet, something in her told her that staying would mean surrendering to fear forever. With trembling hands, she took his hand. As she stepped forward, leaving the ruins behind, the wind carried the whispers of the villagers through the trees. They spoke of curses and destiny, fear and power, but Lyra did not hear them. She only felt the firm grip of the king's hand, the steady beat of his heart, and the presence of the guardian wolf walking silently at her side. For the first time, she felt that perhaps she was not a curse at all. Perhaps she was something more. And as they disappeared into the forest, moving toward a future neither fully understood, the sky darkened, clouds rolling over the horizon like an omen. Something was coming, a test, a challenge, a destiny. Lyra could feel it in her bones. And yet, for the first time, she did not face it alone. The forest seemed endless as Lyra followed King Eric and his army. Every step she took felt heavy, her mind filled with doubts and questions. Who was this king, truly? Why had he come for her? And most importantly, could she trust him? The soldiers walked quietly, forming a protective circle around her. Lyra noticed how every warrior's eyes respected the king, yet none dared speak without permission. Eric moved with a calm confidence that unsettled her. He seemed to know the forest better than she did, as if he had walked its paths before. "You are stronger than you realize," Eric said suddenly, his voice low but firm. Lyra started, not expecting him to speak. He had been silent for a while, and his calm presence made her both nervous and curious. I am no one," she replied softly, her voice trembling. "People say I am cursed. They call me a mistake. I have nothing." Eric stopped and turned to her, his dark eyes studying her face. "You are no mistake," he said quietly. "A curse is only a word. It does not define who you are, nor what you are meant to become." Lyra looked down, unsure whether to trust him. Her life had taught her that words were easy to give and hard to trust. But there was something in the way he spoke, not a command, not a threat, but a truth she felt deep inside. As they walked, the forest grew darker. The sun was hidden behind thick clouds, and the wind carried a chill that made Lyra shiver. Even the soldiers seemed tense, glancing into the shadows with caution. Lyra could feel it too, a strange energy in the air, a quiet warning that danger was near. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the trees. Lyra's heart leapt into her throat as shadowed figures emerged, cloaked and armed with blades. They had been waiting, hidden among the trees, ready to strike. Eric's hand went to his sword. "Stay close," he commanded, his voice steady. The soldiers moved instantly, forming a protective line around Lyra. She felt a strange mix of fear and awe. She had never seen anyone fight like him. He moved like the forest itself, silent and deadly, yet every motion carried grace and control. The cloaked figures attacked, but Eric and his soldiers met them with unmatched precision. Lyra, though frightened, felt a strange pull in her chest. She could sense the emotions of the attackers, their anger, fear, and desperation, and without thinking, she raised her hands. A sudden pulse of energy burst from her, knocking some of the attackers off balance. Eric's eyes widened slightly as he saw her power. "Do not fear it," he called to her. "Control it and it can protect you." Lyra's pulse raced. She had never shown her power to anyone before. It had always been a secret, something she feared even she could not fully understand. But in that moment, with Eric's calm gaze and the soldiers defending her, she realized that perhaps her gift was not a curse, but a strength. The attackers fled, disappearing into the forest shadows. Lyra's hands shook and she lowered them slowly. Eric approached her, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, pride and perhaps relief. "You did well," he said quietly. "Not many can stand against them, but you." His gaze lingered on her, and Lyra felt her breath catch. There was a warmth in his eyes that made her heart race, though she could not explain why. They continued through the forest, and Eric began to speak of the kingdom and its dangers. He told her of rival clans, of sorcerers who sought power through fear, and of an ancient prophecy that spoke of an Omega who would change the fate of Urendor. Lyra listened, her mind struggling to take it all in. "A prophecy?" she asked softly. "Me, I am no one. I am only a rejected Omega. How could I be part of anything important?" Eric stopped again, looking at her directly. "The world does not choose the powerful, Lyra. It chooses those who are strong in ways that cannot be measured by birth or title. You are that strength, and I will help you see it for yourself." Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to deny him, but deep inside she felt the truth of his words. She had spent her life hiding, doubting herself, believing she was cursed. Yet here was a man, the king of the land, telling her that she had value, that she had purpose. As evening approached, the group reached a small clearing. A fire was prepared, and the soldiers began setting up camp. Lyra sat apart from them, her knees drawn to her chest. She watched Eric as he moved among his men, his presence commanding yet calm, and felt a strange pull in her chest, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something she could not name. Eric noticed her watching and approached, kneeling a few feet away. "You do not have to speak," he said softly, "but I want you to know you are not alone, not anymore." Lyra swallowed hard, her emotions conflicting. She had never known safety, never known someone to stand by her without fear or judgment. And yet here was Eric offering both. Her voice caught in her throat. Why me?" she whispered. "Because," he said, his gaze unwavering, "you are the only one who can change what is coming, and because I believe in you." A silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant sounds of the forest. Lyra wanted to speak, to ask questions, to run, but something held her in place. The king's words, his presence, the unspoken understanding between them, it all made her feel something she had not felt in years: hope. Night fell and the forest grew colder. Lyra slept lightly, her senses alert, yet she felt a strange sense of safety near Eric. Even as the wind howled and strange noises echoed through the trees, she felt that he would protect her. In the middle of the night, Lyra woke to a soft rustling near her. Her heart pounded as she reached for her dagger, but then she saw the guardian wolf, standing silently at the edge of the clearing. Its glowing eyes met hers, and she felt a calm she could not explain. The wolf had been with her through loneliness, through fear, and now it seemed to guide her, affirming that her path with Eric was right, even if she did not yet understand why. The next morning, the journey continued. Eric spoke little, but his eyes watched her constantly, noticing her every movement, every hesitation. Lyra began to realize that he did not just see her as a weapon or a prophecy, but as a person, complex, fearful, and strong in ways even she did not understand. They crossed rivers and climbed hills, the forest changing around them, revealing ruins and ancient stones that whispered of a time long past. Eric told her stories of kings and warriors, of battles fought not just with swords but with wisdom, and of magics long forgotten by most of the world. Lyra listened, fascinated, feeling a connection not just to the king, but to the history and magic of the land itself. As dusk approached, the army reached a high ridge overlooking a dark valley. The wind swept across the cliff, tugging at Lyra's hair and cloak. She looked out over the valley, the shadows stretching long and deep, and felt a chill. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones, a presence, powerful and dangerous, waiting for them below. Eric stood beside her, his hand brushing against hers briefly, almost unnoticed. Lyra's heart skipped. She pulled her hand back quickly, but she could not deny the warmth it left behind. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The valley is not safe," Eric said quietly. "We may face resistance before nightfall. Be ready, Lyra." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. She had faced danger before, but never like this. Not with armies, not with kings, and not with herself so intertwined in a destiny she barely understood. Fear and excitement mingled, a storm in her chest. That night, as they camped on the ridge, Lyra could not sleep. She stared at the dark valley below, at the shadows moving within it, and wondered what awaited them. For the first time in her life, she did not feel alone, but she also did not feel entirely safe. The world was larger, darker, and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And yet, somewhere deep inside, she felt that with Eric by her side, she might survive, and perhaps even thrive. A sudden rustling in the bushes made her freeze. She reached for her dagger, ready to defend herself, but then Eric appeared silently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are safe," he whispered. "For now." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time she allowed herself a small, trembling smile. She did not understand the bond forming between them, this strange pull that made her heart beat faster, but she did not try to resist it. The night deepened, the wind howled, and somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched. The journey had only begun, and the dangers of the world were already closing in. Yet for the first time, Lyra felt a flicker of hope, a spark that maybe, just maybe, the Omega called a curse could become something more. The valley below was shrouded in mist as Lyra and King Eric prepared to descend. The first light of dawn barely lit the rugged path, and shadows stretched across the rocks like silent watchers. The air was thick with tension, and Lyra's pulse beat faster than she had ever felt. The feeling of being hunted, of being followed by unseen eyes, pressed against her chest. She glanced at Eric, who was surveying the valley with calm, unyielding focus. His soldiers moved around him with quiet efficiency, weapons at the ready, yet none dared speak without command. Eric's presence was a strange mixture of strength and reassurance. He inspired confidence even when fear clawed at her heart. "Stay close," Eric said quietly, his voice almost lost in the wind. "There are watchers here, and they will not wait for us to make a mistake." Lyra nodded, gripping the edge of her cloak tightly. She had survived alone for years, navigating forests and ruins, evading those who saw her as a curse. But now, surrounded by the king's army, she felt both safer and more exposed than ever. Every step she took was measured, every sound magnified in her ears. The descent was slow, careful. The valley floor was uneven, covered with rocks, roots, and patches of mist that hid sudden drops. Lyra could feel her gift stirring, a tingling in her fingertips as the emotions of the forest and the shadows pressed against her. She could sense them, watchers, strangers, beings from the ancient darkness, but their intentions were unclear. "Do not fear what you cannot see," Eric said beside her, as if reading her thoughts. "You have a strength they cannot understand. Trust it and trust yourself." Lyra swallowed hard. His words were meant to soothe, but they carried a challenge too. For so long, she had lived believing she was a curse. To hear a king tell her otherwise was unsettling and comforting all at once. She wanted to believe him, yet fear held her heart in a tight grip. Suddenly, a shout rang out from the valley floor. Shadows shifted, and figures cloaked in black stepped from behind the rocks. They moved quickly, surrounding the army with an eerie precision. Lyra's heart leapt into her throat. These were no ordinary foes, they were skilled, and their presence radiated dark intent. Eric drew his sword, the blade glinting in the weak sunlight. "Stay behind me," he commanded, though his voice carried more than authority. It carried an unspoken promise of protection. The soldiers formed a defensive circle, shields raised, eyes scanning the attackers. Lyra could feel the tension in the air, every heartbeat magnified. Then instinctively she raised her hands. The gift she had kept hidden for so long stirred, responding to the danger. A soft, glowing light pulsed from her palms, spreading outward, and the attackers stumbled back, startled by the sudden force. Eric's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise passing through his calm expression. "Do not be afraid," he called. "Use it, control it." Lyra focused, feeling the energy flow through her. She could sense the emotions of the attackers, their fear, their anger, their desperation. With careful concentration, she directed the force outward, creating a barrier of light that held them at bay. She had never felt such power before, and yet, with Eric's presence beside her, it felt natural. The attackers, realizing their force could not break the defense, retreated into the mist, disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. The valley fell silent again, save for the soft crackling of leaves underfoot. Lyra lowered her hands, her body trembling from the exertion. "You did well," Eric said quietly, his gaze holding hers. "Your gift is rare. It is not a curse. It is your strength." Lyra's breath caught. She had always feared her power, believing it made her dangerous, unworthy, cursed. But now, with the king standing beside her, acknowledging her ability, she felt a small spark of something she had never felt before: pride. Perhaps she was not a curse after all. As the army moved deeper into the valley, Eric spoke quietly to her, telling stories of the kingdom, of ancient battles, and of prophecies that had guided his ancestors. Lyra listened intently, absorbing every word. The world was far larger than she had imagined, filled with magic, danger, and power. And now, she was no longer on the edges of it, she was part of it. That evening, they set camp near the ruins of an old fortress, half swallowed by the forest. Lyra walked along the crumbling walls, tracing her fingers over the cold stones. The air was thick with history, and she could feel the lingering presence of those who had lived here long ago. The ruins whispered to her, stirring memories she did not understand. Eric joined her, moving quietly, his presence beside her familiar and yet always commanding. "These ruins hold secrets," he said softly, "secrets that may help us understand the challenges ahead." Lyra glanced at him, the faint glow of the campfire reflecting in his dark eyes. "I never knew a king could be human," she said, almost whispering. "I always thought kings were only power, only rules and fear." Eric's lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile that was almost playful. "Power without understanding is empty," he replied. "A king who cannot feel, who cannot see, is no better than those who call you a curse. You are learning this now." As AMI for a moment, the night felt still, suspended in time. Lyra realized that she had spent her life alone, hidden, believing the world was against her. And yet, here was a man who fought for her without question, who believed in her even when she did not. The thought stirred emotions she did not fully understand, fear mixed with trust, and a quiet longing she had never allowed herself to feel. The next morning, Lyra awoke to a distant howl echoing through the forest. The guardian wolf she had bonded with during her time alone padded silently to her side, its glowing eyes watching her intently. Lyra knelt and reached out, feeling the familiar connection, the bond that reminded her she was not entirely alone. "Today will test you," Eric said as he approached, standing quietly beside her. "You will see what your gift can do, and you will see that it is not something to fear." They traveled through the valley, moving closer to the heart of the forest, where the mist grew thicker and the air colder. Lyra felt her powers stir again, a tingling in her hands and chest as if the forest itself was responding to her presence. The air was alive, heavy with magic, and she realized that danger could come from anywhere, not just from people, but from the very land itself. As they neared an ancient stone circle, the ground trembled slightly. Shadows moved among the trees, and Lyra sensed a presence far stronger than anything they had encountered before. She froze, fear gripping her heart, but Eric's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "This is where you will learn," he said quietly. "Do not doubt yourself. You are stronger than you know." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall, cloaked, and radiating dark power. Lyra's chest tightened. She recognized the presence immediately. It was connected to her past, to the curse she had always believed was hers. And now it was here, challenging everything she had become. Eric drew his sword, placing himself between her and the figure. "You will not harm her," he said, his voice like steel. The figure laughed softly, a sound that echoed through the valley like a dark wind. "You are strong, Omega," the figure said, its voice low and cold. "But strength alone cannot protect you. You have feared your gift for years, and now it will be your undoing." Lyra's hands glowed as her power responded instinctively, forming a shield of light around her. The figure stepped closer, testing the barrier, and Lyra felt a surge of energy she had never experienced before. Her power was no longer just a defense, it was a force, alive and connected to her emotions, her fears, and her desire to protect herself and those she cared about. Eric's eyes met hers, filled with trust and unspoken support. "Focus, Lyra," he said. "You are not alone. I am with you." Her heart surged at his words. For the first time she realized that her fear did not control her. With his presence beside her, with the wolf at her side, and with the fire of her own strength, she could face anything. The figure hesitated, sensing the bond between them, and Lyra stepped forward, her light flaring brighter, pushing the darkness back. The figure retreated slightly, acknowledging the strength that came not just from her power, but from her courage, her trust, and the connection she shared with Eric. As the figure disappeared into the mist, the valley grew quiet again. Lyra lowered her hands, breathing heavily, and felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had faced part of her past, her fear, and her so-called curse, and survived. Eric approached, placing a hand on her shoulder, and for the first time Lyra did not pull away. "You are not a curse," he said softly. "You are the light that will guide this kingdom through darkness." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not of fear. They were of relief, of pride, and of something deeper she could not name, a bond, a trust, and a growing connection that neither time nor danger could break. The forest around Lyra and King Eric had grown darker as they moved deeper into the valley. Mist curled around their feet, and the ancient trees twisted overhead like silent sentinels. Every step seemed heavier than the last, as if the land itself tested their determination. Lyra could feel the tension in the air, a thick weight that pressed against her chest and stirred her power within. "You feel it too, don't you?" Eric asked, his voice low and steady. He rode beside her, calm yet alert, the black stallion beneath him pawing at the misty ground. His eyes, sharp and commanding, were fixed on the path ahead. Lyra nodded, gripping the reins of her own horse tightly. "Yes," she said softly, "something is waiting, something dangerous." Eric's hand brushed hers briefly, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but it sent a shiver through her. He did not speak, yet in that touch there was reassurance, strength, and an unspoken promise that he would not let harm come to her. They approached a clearing where the ruins of an old fortress rose from the mist. Broken walls and shattered towers bore the scars of time and battle. Lyra's heart tightened as she recognized the place from her past, the remnants of the curse that had followed her since childhood. Memories of fear, rejection, and loneliness surged, but this time she was not alone. "This is it," Eric said quietly. "Here you will confront the darkness that has haunted you." Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. She had feared this moment for years, yet the presence of Eric, the soldiers, and the guardian wolf gave her courage. She stepped forward, feeling the power in her hands respond to the rising tension in the valley. From the shadows of the ruins, a figure emerged. Tall, cloaked in black, and radiating a cold, dark energy, it moved with confidence. Lyra's breath caught. She knew instantly who it was, the sorcerer who had cursed her family long ago, the one who had turned whispers and fear into her reality. "You have grown strong, Omega," the figure said, its voice low and cold. "But strength alone will not save you. You have feared yourself for too long. Now you will learn the cost of disobedience." Lyra's hands glowed, her light pulsing with energy she had never fully controlled before. She took a step forward, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "I am not afraid anymore," she said. "You will not control me. I am not a curse. I am me." Eric stepped beside her, his sword drawn, forming a protective presence. "Whatever comes," he said, his voice unwavering, "we face it together." The sorcerer raised a hand, sending a wave of dark energy toward them. Lyra felt it strike against her shield instinctively. The force pushed her back slightly, but she stood firm. Her light flared, stronger than ever, fueled not by anger or fear, but by determination and the trust she felt in Eric. "You are stronger than you realize," Eric said calmly, his sword meeting the dark energy with a spark that echoed through the ruins. "Trust yourself, Lyra. Trust what you can do." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. The whispers of her past, the pain, the rejection, the fear, rose inside her, but instead of weakening her, they became a part of her strength. She opened her eyes, and a brilliant wave of light surged from her hands, striking the sorcerer. He staggered back, shocked by the force, and Lyra realized that she could shape her power, not just defend with it. The energy she had feared all her life was not a curse, it was her gift. And now she was using it to fight, to protect, and to reclaim her destiny. Eric fought beside her, his movements precise and protective. He did not hold her back, nor did he take over. He was her partner in battle, his presence steadying her when doubt tried to creep in. Together, their combined strength pushed the sorcerer toward defeat. The guardian wolf leapt forward, bounding through the shadows, its eyes glowing with the same light as Lyra's. It struck with precision, forcing the sorcerer to retreat further into the ruins. Lyra felt a surge of gratitude and connection, realizing that she had never been truly alone. "You cannot win," the sorcerer hissed, his voice echoing through the ruins. "The curse, it was never mine," Lyra shouted, her voice echoing louder than the sorcerer expected. "It was yours. You made me believe I was weak, that I was cursed, but I am stronger than you imagined." With a final surge of power, Lyra's light enveloped the sorcerer, pushing him to his knees. He struggled, but her energy, fueled by years of pain, determination, and trust in Eric, was unstoppable. With a final cry, the darkness that had haunted her was lifted, dissolving into the mist around them. The valley fell silent, save for the crackling of fires from the soldiers' camp. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but victorious. Eric knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced your past, your fears, and your so-called curse. You are no longer defined by what others said of you. You are free." Tears filled Lyra's eyes, but they were tears of relief and triumph, not sorrow. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. She had faced the shadows of her past and had emerged stronger, not broken. And she had done it not alone, but with someone who had believed in her when even she did not. Eric extended his hand and Lyra took it, standing beside him. "You are remarkable," he said, his eyes holding hers. "Not because of your power alone, but because of your courage, your heart, and your strength to face the world as you are." Lyra felt her heart stir in a way she could not fully describe. She had spent so long hiding, fearing rejection, fearing herself, that this feeling, connection, trust, belonging was almost overwhelming. And yet, standing beside Eric, she knew she belonged. Not just in the kingdom, not just as an Omega, but as herself, fully and unafraid. The soldiers, who had watched in awe, now bowed slightly, acknowledging her strength and courage. They had seen the girl once called a curse transform into someone powerful, someone capable, and someone who would shape the future of the kingdom. As they moved to leave the ruins, Eric and Lyra walked side by side. The wind swept through the valley, carrying away the remnants of the dark magic and replacing it with a quiet calm. The forest seemed to breathe, acknowledging the end of the shadow that had lingered for so long. "You have changed the kingdom," Eric said quietly, his hand brushing hers again. "Not with power alone, but with courage and heart. And you have changed me too." Lyra glanced at him, her chest tightening. "Changed you?" she asked softly. Eric nodded, his dark eyes softening. "I have carried burdens for years, decisions, regrets, solitude. But seeing you, seeing your courage, your truth, it has reminded me why I fight, and why I must protect those who cannot protect themselves. You remind me that strength and compassion are one and the same." Lyra felt warmth fill her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and something deeper. For so long she had longed to be seen, to be understood, and now she was not just seen. She was valued, trusted, and connected to someone who mattered in a way she had never imagined. The sun began to rise, casting golden light over the valley and illuminating the path ahead. Lyra and Eric stood at the edge of the forest, looking toward the kingdom they had fought to protect and the future they were now part of. The journey had been long, filled with fear, danger, and uncertainty, but it had also revealed truths, courage, and bonds that would last a lifetime. "You are not alone anymore," Eric said softly, taking her hand in his. "Whatever comes, whatever shadows return, we will face them together." Lyra nodded, her heart steady for the first time in years. "Together," she echoed. And as they rode toward the horizon, the forest behind them calm and still, the kingdom ahead bathed in light, Lyra felt a sense of hope she had never known. She was no longer the cursed Omega, no longer the outcast. She was herself, strong, capable, and ready for whatever destiny awaited. Yet, even as the wind carried the scent of freedom and dawn, a faint shimmer in the distance reminded them that the world was alive with magic, and that challenges would come again. But for now they had survived and they had won, not just through power, but through trust, courage, and a bond that could not be broken. Lyra glanced at Eric and their eyes met. No words were needed. The unspoken understanding between them spoke of respect, loyalty, and something deeper, a connection that would guide them through any darkness, no matter what the future held. The kingdom stretched before them, mist lifting from the valleys, sunlight warming the fields, and a sense of peace settling over the land. And together, Lyra and Eric rode onward, ready to face whatever new adventures destiny had prepared, side by side, unbroken and unafraid.